We're going to be talking about what's working best today at driving leads and sales with marketing. There's a statistic that came out of Marketing Sherpa, which is one of the information sources, B2B marketing. And they said, and I'm quoting, although businesses spend just a little bit under 5%, 4.8% of revenue on marketing, compared to more than 11% of revenue on sales, that marketing is now responsible for bringing in over half of the leads, 60%. Why is it more effective? Well, you can talk to exponentially more prospects than you could touch by sales alone. I mean, even if you're really efficient, how many people can you visit a day? How many people could you call a day? Well, in that same time, you could send out tens or hundreds of thousands of emails, for example, and be talking to those prospects as you go. You can generate up to 300% more sales-ready opportunities and get them into the sales pipeline because you're using marketing to do some of those steps to determine which are sales-ready. Because of all that, your salespeople become up to 50% more efficient. They are not wasting their time with non-prospects, and they're getting on the phone with the prospects most likely to be able to buy. And because of that, your cost per sale can drop 25% or more because you replace some of the more expensive one-to-one touches with less expensive marketing touches. So how do you do that? Well, a proven marketing-driven sales strategy would look something like this, using lower cost per touch marketing for prospecting, nurturing, and qualifying, the first three sort of steps in the sales process. How do we find prospects, get them to engage, raise their hands? How do we nurture them until they are qualified and sales ready? And then it gets turned over to the sales team, whose responsibility is to demo, propose, and close the sale and turn that prospect into a customer and into an ongoing stream of revenue, and then perhaps to upsell, cross-sell, and continue to keep the customer. So really, you're using lower cost per touch marketing to do the first part of the process, and then focusing your higher cost per touch salespeople on the later part of the process, the one-to-one sort of parts of the process, where you're meeting with people by phone or virtually with web demonstrations, or you're meeting across the desk from them, and you're demonstrating the product or the service, or you're proposing a solution to their problem, and then you're hopefully closing the sale and getting the business and moving forward. So that part of it being done by the higher per touch salespeople makes a lot of sense. I talked about the 4 rights to generating more leads and driving more sales. In the case of lead generation, I'm talking about doing the right thing 4 times. And the right thing starts with, number 1, focusing on the right prospects. Who are the people at what kinds of companies or organizations are most likely to need, specify, recommend, or buy your products or services? So I'm going to suggest you start by focusing on those that are most similar to the recent specifiers or buyers who've done business with you. Why? Because they're already doing business with you, so that is kind of an indication that you want to find other people and companies like them to market to that have similar needs or problems or similar applications for your product or service. That includes those who have recently inquired, that have been to your website, filled out a form, stopped by your booth at the trade show, come to your virtual event, attended your webinar, whatever the case may be. Those often are also a strong indication of the kinds of prospects that you should be focusing on first. Those that are currently visiting your web pages, they are actively searching for products or solutions and finding your page somehow in that searching, which indicates a strong interest. You also want to look at the people that are actively visiting your web pages. And there is software now that can identify the domains or URLs of people visiting your website, and you can use that information to work backwards and kind of build out your database saying, gee, if somebody from XYZ Corporation, let's say Siemens Corporation or Ford Motor, has been visiting your particular web pages, we can go back and figure out who those folks are. Those also actively searching the web. So people that are typing keywords or phrases into Google and looking for your kinds of products and services, they're the ideal profile of folks that you should be trying to market to right now, trying to sell to right now. And then finally, the group that's already in your database, they probably got there for some reason or another. Somebody felt that they were a good group of prospects, or you purchased a list, or you got the list of attendees at a trade show, or there are people who in the past had inquired to you. A lot of those names are worth using as a source for focusing on first. Why? Because they often generate better results than new or purchase lists. But regardless, once you've focused on these folks, you use these folks as a model to go find more like them. Other companies that are similar in size or geography or application, other people that have similar job functions or titles or problems to solve, and use them to build out your prospect database. First, you've got to clean up what you've already got, which means deduplicating it, address standardizing it, and then once you've got that cleaned up, you can append firmographic or company information. You know, the size of the company, the SIC codes they're in, the number of employees or the revenue numbers, where they're located. Often when you're appending firmographic information, you can get the corporate address and a corporate phone number, and that gives you a lot of information that will be useful to market to, but also for the salespeople eventually. Then once we've sort of determined who our sweet spot is based on the previous things we talked about, then we want to sort of narrow in on those folks and find more companies and contacts like them and add them to the database. So that's building out your prospect database, and really it's your number one asset. Out of all the things you can do in marketing, your database becomes one of your most valuable tools once it's built. So it's probably well worth the effort to clean that up, to append it, and to add additional companies and contacts in those sweet spots. The second right out of the four is to use the right media. And there are all sorts of choices today. The problem is our budgets aren't any bigger than they used to be. Sometimes they're smaller because of the recession and the economic times that we're going through or have gone through. And sometimes they're smaller because we have to spread the fewer dollars across more things. So the right media for lead generation falls into two general categories: pull or push, or inbound or outbound, depending on which buzzword you've been paying attention to lately. And let's talk about the inbound first. Typically that's online marketing. That's being found when people are searching for you. If they type a certain key phrase or word into Google, coming up to the top of the search results, which is sometimes difficult for us to do ourselves. So we have the opportunity to buy that position sometimes through pay-per-click advertising, or being in an industry portal where they are already optimizing for search so that your products get found when people are searching. So it's another way to get to the top of the search results. You want to be in the online directories that used to be print directories, but they're mostly all online now to keep them up to date and more convenient for people. You want to be in the directories that are used by your kinds of prospects, your kinds of customers. You want to be in those directories and be found when they're searching there. And another thing which we're all sort of playing with these days is social media marketing. You want to be found in such a way that you can use social media to get the message out, but also others are aware of you and may recommend you or suggest you, or you can join in on a conversation that's about a particular application that your product or service would be helpful with. You have to be kind of careful because social media is, you've got to engage people, you've got to have a conversation, you've got to address their needs, and it's definitely soft sell. But all of that pull or inbound marketing really is being found by the people that are searching for your kinds of products or services in your kind of industry. The other category of marketing you could call push or outbound marketing, and the tool that seems to be most effective today is direct marketing in the push world of email or e-newsletters. Others' e-newsletters or your own both work. For example, your e-newsletter may go out to your customer and prospect database, but you can also advertise in some of the e-newsletters sent out that reach hundreds of thousands or millions of other specifiers or users or buyers of your products or services. Another direct marketing technique that's commonly used is the phone. You could call it telemarketing because it's pre-sales. We're trying to call and find out if the person has a need and an active interest and would like to speak to one of our salespeople. So that can be integrated into your programs depending on the value of the opportunity, the value of the sale, and whether you can afford it or not. Postal mail, surprisingly, if done right, is working very well today. But if done right, means not just doing a single shot. It means integrating it in. Sending postal mail, for example, to people who cannot receive your emails or have chosen to opt out. It's using it as kind of a 1, 2, 3, 4 touch of email, maybe postal mail. Testing different things to see what really works best for you, rather than just doing a single mailing and saying, "Gee, I spent a lot of money and didn't get anything out of it." The other push marketing could be things like events, webcasts, events like this one, seminars, and you could also do live events in a select basis, but they're a little bit more expensive to pull off because you have to travel. You have to rent the hotel meeting room and often supply food and whatever. So there's a heavy shift towards doing it all on the web and virtual events, and that certainly makes a lot of sense for a lot of companies. And there are occasionally times when it makes sense to do live seminars or breakfast briefings or lunch and learns. So that combination of inbound and outbound marketing works best. It's kind of like 1 and 1 equals 3. The two complement each other. One helps you get found by all those people that are looking, which are great prospects, and the other one allows you to rifle shoot or target at those prospects that have either expressed an interest by raising their hands or have look like your best prospects and have been put on your database, and you're continuing to market to them to stay in sight and in mind. So really consider a mix of inbound and outbound. And the dirty secret is some of the inbound marketers who've written books on the subject, they actually do outbound marketing too. They don't call it that, they call it follow-up, but it is outbound marketing. So inbound marketing works best for awareness, branding, lead generation, those kinds of things, getting the message out to being found by lots of people as they're starting to look around. And content is the key to being found with inbound marketing. So that's content, again, in your own websites, in the industry portals, on your channel partners' websites, in your blogs, in your videos. There's a lot of slide share sites now and document share sites where you can put out information and or PowerPoint presentations. In your e-newsletter pages, which are often indexable by the search engines and can be found. And then, of course, leveraging that in social media as well. Tweeting about it, using LinkedIn to let the world know about this event you've got coming up or to go take a look at your video. So one thing about your websites is you need to address some key points to make them effective. And I think a lot of us never got around to doing this, or we did it once years ago and haven't come back and taken a fresh look at it. But it has to answer right away to the prospect, is this company, product, service what I'm looking for? In other words, did I get to the right place? Because if they don't get that answer instantly, they're going to hit the backup key and go check the next thing in the search results, or they'll go check the next company in the directory. The next question they're asking themselves is, does this company work with companies like me or people like me, or provide products or services for businesses like mine? My size companies, my industry, my geography. They're trying to figure that out quickly. So for example, recently I was looking for some services, and it appeared that all of those companies that I found nearby were focused on really big companies as their customers. And then I stumbled across another website where it was very clear that they specialize in working with small businesses like mine. And I felt much more comfortable engaging with them, and they eventually won the business. The third thing they're trying to figure out is what's better, different about this company, product, or service. Quickly differentiate. There's thousands of suppliers in certain categories, and you may be in one of those categories. How do I know which one should get to the short list? How do I figure that out quickly? Because I don't have time to look at all 1,000 suppliers. I need to narrow it down to the top 2 or 3 pretty quickly. And how can you help me do that with your web page? And that leads into the next point, which is my favorite radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? What they're asking is, what should I do next, and what am I going to get if I do that? Can I get a specifying guide? Can I get some information that will help me make a better decision? Can I get a sample? Can I get a free demonstration? Can I get, and then how do I request that? Do I call you? Do I fill out the form? Do I send you an email? Perhaps you want to make it easy for me to do it whichever way I prefer to do it, rather than just the way you want to make it easy for you. And you'll increase the number of leads you're going to get from your website. So you can turn your website from a brochure into a lead generating machine if you start addressing some of these points. Outbound marketing is a category. I think it works best for proactively communicating with key prospects. So in other words, you get a list of companies and contacts that are exactly the kinds of companies and contacts that do business with you, and you start rifle shooting at them with your direct marketing as an example. But it also works really well for following up, nurturing, and qualifying the leads that weren't immediately sales ready. And that represents 3 out of 4 of your sales opportunities. Let me say that again. 3 out of 4 of the sales that you could get come from the leads that are not immediately sales ready. So you have to have some sort of a program in place to manage those leads, to follow them up, to nurture them, and determine when they are now legitimately qualified and ready for sales. And once you figure that out, now you're on your way to getting that 300% more sales that we talked about earlier. In B2B magazine, in their online edition recently, they had a quotation from Juan Carlos Guerrero, who's a marketing director of enterprise services, storage, and networking at HP. And his example was, we at HP have focused on driving leads by optimizing all the tools available, from digital marketing to telemarketing and direct mail. In other words, not just digital marketing, not just print advertising, not just those things. And he said as a result of leveraging both inbound and outbound and focusing on all those tactics, they've increased their leads by 30 to 40%. And I think they could increase them even more with some additional thought put into the programs. But that's a pretty significant increase, isn't it? Without necessarily spending any more money, just doing it a little bit smarter, a little bit better. That leads us up to make the right offers, or said otherwise, calls to action. What you're trying to do is bait the hook or have the carrot on the string to get these prospects to nibble, to identify themselves. And to make those offers right, they need to be aligned with where the prospects are in their buying process. And what I mean by that is if they're ready to buy now, they might be interested in a demo or a quote. But if they're just starting to gather information, they're really earlier in their sales process, they may not be willing to talk to a salesperson. They might want an info kit, or they might want a white paper or a checklist or something to help them sort of get started on thinking about why your product or service is better. The other part of your offer should be to help those prospects move forward in their buying decision. So move them from awareness to inquiry, to get them to raise their hands and say, yes, I'm interested. To get them to move from inquiry to consideration, to say, yeah, this company, this product, this service sounds like it's going to solve my needs. It should be on the short list. And to get them to move from consideration to purchase, to being sales ready, getting them to say, okay, I'm ready to speak to sales, or through their behaviors and their demographic and their firmographic and their answers to qualifying questions to determine that they are ready for sales and pass them along and for that one-to-one sales follow-up. Let me talk about a great book called Customer-Centered Selling by Robert Joels. I was introduced to it by another consultant that it was worth reading, and I agree with him 100%. And there are a whole bunch of books on selling and different selling methodologies, but what I liked most about this is it focused on the customer rather than on selling, on helping them buy. And if you look at this sort of circle of needs, it starts out where they're first acknowledging that they have a need, they have a problem. Then they start saying, you know, maybe we should look around and figure out who are the right folks to be talking to. So they make a decision to start the buying process. Then they start saying, well, how do I know which one to pick? What should be the criteria for selecting this product or service and the company that provides it? You know, which supplier are we going to go to, and what product are we going to buy, or what service are we going to specify? Then they start thinking about, well, how am I going to measure the difference between these companies so I can make an intelligent decision? And finally, they get to the point where they're starting to investigate options, which are the companies that say they have these products or services, and how do I narrow it down to, you know, the short list, and then finally get into the purchase selection. But there are a couple of points here that I'd like to make. One is that prospects generally only spend about 5% of their time in that selection process, in the investigation of options. Most of their time is spent before that, you know, determining that they have a need, trying to figure out that they should start a buying process, establishing the selection criteria, determining the measurement criteria, and then finally they get into that stage. What's also interesting is that salespeople spend nearly 100% of their time in those stages, with prospects in those stages. That's what they want, the ones they can close. So marketing has to do a better job of the rest of the circle. It has to start with acknowledgement of needs and move on up to the point where you do get shortlisted and you're one of the options being investigated. And then sales gets involved to help them decide that your product or service or company is the best supplier for them. Now, there are some other thoughts, which are buyer's remorse, or what I call reconsideration. How do you confirm that they made a good decision? And that marketing plays a role there too, as well as determining customer satisfaction and taking what you learn from that and going back and starting over again. And simply said, it's from awareness to inquiry to consideration to purchase. You might want to have offers that align with where they may be in your buying process. Now, if you know where they are, you can make relevant offers. If they've already indicated we're just starting to look around, then you're offering them things like info kits, how-to guides, white papers. If they've already raised their hand and said, I'm interested, you know that they're in the inquiry to consideration process, that's when you may offer things like case studies or decision-making tools or evaluation checklists, or invite them to a 1-hour webinar, which takes a little bit bigger commitment to say yes to and attend than it does to say, just send me the info kit. And then finally, if they've made it clear through their behavior or answers they've given you to questions you've asked that they are considering in the consideration to purchase stage, then you want to offer them things like a free assessment or samples or a consultation or a custom demo, or invite them to a intensive seminar or workshop, whether that be online or in person. Give them a quotation and make them some buy now offers or incentives, that if they buy now, they get this as well, or they get special support, or they get, some special deal to get them off the fence and into the decision to buy from your company. Now, there's all types of offers out there, and on the screen here you'll see that there's everything from application notes and articles to checklists and configurators to virtual events and videos and seminars or ROI calculators, newsletters. You need to think about what you've got in the way of offers that can be made available and where you have gaps. And what you want to do is develop sort of a content map that looks at various buyer personas. For example, a purchasing person may have different criteria and different needs than an engineering person or a production person. If all three of them are involved in the buying of your products, do you have content or literature or materials or webinars or articles or videos or seminars that address it from their point of view? Then you want to create a suite of offers that address the various steps in the buying process, because you don't always know where that prospect is. So you want to say there are 3 ways to learn more. You can get the white paper, or you can come to the webinar, or you can speak to one of our sales engineers and have a free consultation. Those are 3 different sort of flavors or strengths of the offer that are more appropriate to different stages of the buying process. One real important tip is that you want to create new offers by repurposing, refreshing, or rebundling existing content you've got. For example, if you look back at your newsletter articles, there may have been the top 10 most read articles in 2011, and that becomes an offer. You could package up a white paper, a research study, and a case study, and you could put them together and call it a decision maker kit. You could have checklists. Maybe you do a webinar and you can turn that webinar into a white paper, or vice versa. Or maybe you have a white paper that you can turn into a checklist and a webinar and a video. So a lot of times you can repurpose the content from a white paper to a webinar or video. You can refresh it by making sure that some of the content may be evergreen, but some of the terminology is out of date, and it needs to be re-edited rather than rewritten from scratch. Maybe you change the copyright date and the date of the publication when you refresh it, and now it looks brand new again. It's kind of like taking your car to be detailed. It comes out at the other end looking a lot better than when it went in. And another tip about offers is that a good title can quadruple response. A title that has a benefit in the title, not just the name, like a white paper about XYZ. And an example of that was a white paper about technology. The title was basically technology white paper, and you could substitute your product name there, product name white paper, and it had 0 responses when they offered it. They simply read through it. They had somebody take a look at it, and they realized that there were 4 or 5 really important points that everybody should know about this kind of product or service. And so they came out and said, instead of calling it a white paper, they said it's an executive's guide to the 4 or 5 things you need to ask about this kind of product or service. And in the first day, they had a couple hundred inquiries for it. So just by retitling it made a huge difference in the response rate. So the 4th right is be there at the right time. And you could be lucky and just happen to get your message in front of the prospect at the exact time that they have a need or a problem, but you're betting against yourself. There are 365 days a year, and you're hoping that your email or your trade show exhibit or your virtual event is there at exactly the right time. Instead, what you want to do is use ongoing multi-touch campaigns so that you stay in sight and in mind. And that increases your chance of being there when the prospect is looking for your kinds of services or products. What I really want to say here is that one-shot campaigns rarely work, if at all. But ongoing multi-touch campaigns can work very well, because if you mail something to me once or email me once, you have 1 chance of being there at the right time. If you mail to me 36 times a year with email, you have 36 chances of being there at the right time. And if you have a consistent presence on industry sites or in industry newsletters, you again have additional opportunities to be there at the right time, at the right place, so that you get shortlisted really quickly when they're ready to move that way. That leads me to another dilemma. How often should you proactively contact prospects? Well, there are 2 ways to look at it. From their point of view, the key to that is relevance and usefulness. If you send me stuff that has nothing to do with what I do for a living or my business or personal situation, it's not relevant. I consider that to be spam or junk mail, or I just flip the page if I'm reading, or I walk right past the booth at the trade show, or I don't look at the exhibit at a virtual event. But if it is relevant, there's a high likelihood I'll at least take a quick look to see what it is and see if it's appropriate to me and my business, or solving my problems, or filling my particular need. The usefulness, I probably should have said relevance and frequency, meaning if I overly communicate, if I communicate too often, they'll often opt out or say, take me off the list, just because you become a pest. So you need to be frequent enough to stay in sight and in mind and be top of mind between touches, marketing touches, but you don't want to be so frequent that they either put you in a junk filter or hit the button to say opt me out. Now, from your point of view as a marketer, frequency depends on what happened last with that prospect. What did he do or not, or she not do? The value of the prospect. Certain prospects are worth more attention. They're worth spending more on, so they're worth the phone call in addition to the email, or they're worth the direct mailing or the 3-dimensional direct mailing, the lumpy mailing that might get opened. That makes a difference. And also, frequency depends on the media used. If I email you every day, you'll probably opt out. If I send you a piece of direct mail every day for a week, you might not opt out as long as it doesn't continue forever, but eventually you might say, save a tree, take me off this list. But if it's once a week, it may be just fine, or 2 or 3 times a month may be just fine. But if I try to call you 2 or 3 times a month, that may be too frequent. It almost seems like I'm stalking you. Now, of course, if you said, please call me, you should attempt multiple times to reach that person. Again, from your point of view, the frequency depends on what happened last, the value of the prospect, the media used, and what relevant and useful information you can share with them. Do you have something that would be a logical next step after they've done X or not done Y that you could offer them that might be appropriate? So for example, if they attended the webinar, could you offer them a white paper on the subject that has more depth? That's very useful. But what you want to do is avoid making your prospects feel like a target. You want them to feel like you're engaging them in a dialogue, a conversation, that you're trying to address their needs. You're trying to help them buy, not sell them. It's really kind of a relationship building approach using database-driven direct marketing. Now, if you want to learn more about any of this, I've got a couple of things you can ask for. Send me an email at McIntosh@acquireb2b.com or go to acquireb2b.com, and we've got a sales lead calculator spreadsheet. We also have a sales lead success checklist that might be useful to help you remember the things you should be doing with your leads. We also have a newsletter called B2B Marketing Technology Insights that you may find useful. It's chock full of information to help marketers be more successful at driving leads and sales with marketing technologies such as marketing automation.